Today we're going to be talking about one battle after another film written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Without any spoilers, it's a film starring Leo DiCaprio, Teyana Taylor, Chase Infiniti. It's an ensemble cast. It's a story whereby you can say it's a Leo DiCaprio film because we are constantly following his character throughout the film, but then all these other characters have different storylines, which is something that PTA does. Just like when you watch Boogie Nights or films like that is done in the past, it's almost so similar. But the main protagonist, in my opinion, would be Leo DiCaprio's character. So the film starts out with this protest. So these guys are doing this protest, and it's about a revolution, people against the government. So at the beginning, you already know it sort of tells you what it's gonna be about. You know, it's a social, political film, and you're following it, trying to understand what's going on. So in the first 30 minutes, we are following Teyana Taylor's character, and you see the ups and downs, her relationship with Leo's character, and you realize they're a couple and everything that they're doing, which sets us up for this world until one day when things go array, and then it becomes a matter of escaping what they went into, and when Teyana Taylor's character is finally caught and the consequences of that, her storyline sort of ends there, and then it picks up with Leo's character as he's raising his child and everything that happens afterwards. When the film is almost at the end, we realize what's happening. One of the main antagonists now has to go find Leo and his daughter because he's trying to cleanse his mistakes and yada yada. Then he finds them, and we see what happened, how the daughter came in and why the daughter has to disappear. And then in the end, the film ends. And I think that it's a sort of film where you probably have to watch it twice or even 3 times to have an opinion on it in terms of just what the story is. Because the first time you watch it, there's a lot that's happening and it can be so confusing. But also that's what makes it a beautiful film. It's a film that talks a lot about the political situation that we're living in right now. It's a film that talks about just things that people are experiencing, you know. At some point, you have people at the borders, people in detention centers, and there's commentary on that, which is something that I feel has been lacking in film. Like, films nowadays don't really talk about situations nowadays, or when they do, it's so coded that it's very difficult to see. Whereas with this one, it's on the nose, and it feels like a film. It feels like a PTA film in general. So that's one thing that I loved about the movie. The performances within it all were beautiful. You know, I think I once heard the statement that representation matters. You know, it's something that I never truly appreciated until recently. Like, a lot of times when I'm watching shows now, and I think that it's just because something I pay attention to. I was at a film school graduation, and they were showing these short films and different short films. And the thing that happened was I noticed that out of, let's say, the 12, I think it was 12 films that were on screen, in only one had one black person in it, and all the other 12 didn't. And that made me realize how important representation is, because I became conscious of it, because you can't relate to what you're watching. The experiences of the film is a reflection of society, and when you're not reflected, both in bad and positive light, it takes away from your experiences you're watching it. And it's not to say that, you know, DEI or whatever, but it's more to say, I think films have to represent the society that they're shot in or that they're trying to showcase. But also I understand if it's a white writer who probably doesn't engage with black people in their life, you know, so it is what it is. You are not the audience for that film. But when I was watching this, I felt the essence of representation, especially when you think of black revolutionaries, like their stories, how they've been depicted and how they've been shown. You know, a lot of times they've been shown to be these anti-government people who are doing this anti-government, who are trying to vilify the government, these people that are so bad. But whereas in this, there's an essence of empowering of a woman who has a goal and is trying to achieve something. She's driven by the need to drive change, to stop the government from doing the bad things that it's doing. So she has a goal, she has a thing. You might not agree with what she's doing, but you sort of sympathize with their actions, and that's what happens in the beginning, and you see it's a revolutionary group and everything that's happening. So that part I was really taken by it, and I felt okay, I sort of understand what's going on until things start falling apart, which they always do. When you look at South Africa, what happened during the apartheid, or Zimbabwe during colonization, when things were starting to change, and how those people are affected. And I felt like in this film they really showed how black heroes are often been destroyed, and how it all ends in sadness, to whereby your empowered voice, it's taken away. These people were brutally murdered. They were not treated as criminals, but as people who had to be taken down. The film then touches on a growing thing with white supremacy and things like that. It touches on that, and it showcases this divide. And one thing that I like is it doesn't do the mixing of things. It moves, it progresses from this to that, and you have this character whom I feel like without him being funny, you almost cannot. I think he's such a brutal character, and I think that makes him palatable, and that's something that someone like PTA can come up with and see. And I've seen such characters, but mostly in South African films where they would have this brutal character and make him funny. Like there's a joke that goes within Southern Africa of, they do not call me Die Hard for nothing. Like, he reminded me of that character. And when you move on from there to what the film is doing, and you're trying to thread the needle of like, okay, what's happening? You have Benicio del Toro's character, who's the sensei who helps him raise his daughter and who's protecting his own people because of this police presence. And it shows you the duality of people's issues, right? So it's like, I have my problems, you have your problems, but we're almost all affected by the same thing. And when you bring these problems to town, it's an issue. And I think that there was a lot of highlight in terms of just what the immigrant experience is, or what the experience of a lot of people who are just trying to take care of their families and give their families a better life are going through. And I sort of like that in the way that he does it, and just showcases everything. When we talk about performances, I think Leo DiCaprio, for me, man, I don't think this type of performances are the type where people would say he deserves to get an Oscar or he deserves recognition. But I actually think this, for me, is acting. This is him being a character, because when you have to think about what his daily life is like, and compared to the character he's playing this guy who smokes crack, who was a revolutionary, and who's doing all these things. And the way he delivers his performance, I think it is phenomenal, just from a audience perspective, or even just as a fan. I'm like, wow. He like, it reminded me of his character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just the ruggedy and the sense of delivery that he has, the rustiness that he has. And it's impressive, man. Like, this is a multi-millionaire playing this type of guy, and you're like, how is this possible? And then you look at Teyana Taylor's performances as well. I think she held her own. When you have to act against some of the veterans in there, she's having to act opposite Sean Penn. She's having to act opposite Leo DiCaprio, and she's holding her own, and she's delivering her things. So I think that performance-wise, everybody did. And then we get Chase Infiniti. I had never seen any of her work prior to this, so this was my first time experiencing her, and I think she delivered, man. She did her thing for the time that she had on the screen. I think this film has one of the most chase scenes that are so interesting. Like, it's the first time where I've felt in a long time like screaming at the screen, like, yo, when Leo is going the opposite direction from his daughter, when his daughter is being taken, and you're like, yo, yo, yo. But then there's a very interesting chase scene that happens within the film, and it was the most intense, because it's like, in your mind, with time, what will come out, but the anticipation is just massive. It's like, yo, can we get there? Can we get there? Can we get there? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And it's a beautiful end to the film with everything that happens, how then he gets reconnected with his daughter. My only issue thus far with the film was when it comes to storytelling, especially in 2025, there's an issue with race and cultural norms that is very difficult, especially as a writer, to write, just to understand the different nuances of culture. And this is, call it nitpicking or whatever, but like for me, one of the major issues I had with the film was the depiction of Teyana Taylor's character when she gives birth. So at the end of the film, we realize how she got pregnant and her feelings towards a child. And in a way, this was a child that was, not in a way, this was a child that was born from a act of sexual assault. And this is something where now we are going into, how does the mother feel? How does the mother see the baby? How, when the baby is born, her reaction to it. And some of the things she was saying is, you don't see me as beautiful, and all these things. And what I felt for me was a massive problem is just being someone who grew up amongst black people in the black community. And maybe it's a Zimbabwean thing, or it's a Southern African thing, or it's a black thing. I just felt like her reaction to a baby was not real. There is one thing that is common amongst any black person, is the mother's love. Like, a mother will love her child no matter what, no matter what the circumstance, no matter what the situation. It might be the most painful thing, but she will love her baby and protect her baby to a level that is too much, rather than develop hate to where she doesn't even want to see her baby. And the idea that she would choose the revolution over her child, I just found it difficult to believe. And this is not coming to, because I feel like this film can suffer from the critique that Leo was playing a white savior, but he wasn't. I think in this film, there was just that cultural mishap, which sort of took me out of the film, because I was like, there's just no way, you know? And then in a way, I could see it just in terms of how the baby was conceived. Like, there are cases of mothers who give up on their kids, who leave their kids at the fire station. There are cases of mothers who would leave their kids at their grandmother's house and run away because they feel like they cannot do it. But in most cases, those mothers do that out of love, in as much as it might be hard for anyone to accept. But they do it out of love, in a sense of, I cannot take care of the baby. This baby needs more than I can provide for. Hence, I need to find somebody else to do it. It's not from I'm selfish and I don't want to, you know. So I just found it challenging to believe that that could happen, and then for her to go away and not try to reconcile with the baby. I just found that difficult. But then also, it's a film that has a narrative that it has to push forward. And I just felt that that would have come from the only way. PTA is a white man writing a story about a black woman, and fine, you know, maybe he has consultants and stuff like that, but like, I feel it missed the mark for me at that point. And then what you then have as it progresses is how the baby is treated by the different black women in her life who come along. So for example, when Regina Hall's character comes back into the film and finds Chase Infiniti's character, and she's trying to protect her, that is something that I know, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, and you know they'll do anything for a child, because if there's one thing that I do know within our community, is everybody sees the innocence of a child, no matter the situation of how the child was conceived. If there's one thing that brings us together, is a child. A child brings the black community together in most cases, because everybody understands this child is innocent. And that is something that I think is just genetically coded throughout the world. Like, we don't play about babies, you know. When I saw that, I was like, fine. And then when they go to the sisters' monastery, whatever, and the sisters, they're like, we don't know about this child, you know, a child of a rat is a rat. I'm like, that's not how this works. That's not how this game works. I just don't believe it, you know. And I felt like in those instances, the story started missing certain points which are cultural, and which could have been done better. Like, there's different ways of doing it, and I just didn't see it happening in that way. But also, the story, it's important those things happen, because it was trying to highlight a lot of things where it's like the idea of being a snitch or a rat within the community is something that's frowned upon, and for good reason, you know, because the belief, is we handle our own problems. You don't report to the police and stuff like that. because the consequences are sort of dire because they're permanent. You know, when you watch what happens to the activists in the opening, it's the consequences are not like you make a mistake and you're forgiven. It's you make a mistake and you're dead. So for the black community, dealing with the system is not something that is wise. You know, the consequences are always massive. You can be outspoken, you can have money, you can have whatever, but nothing protects you, you know. So I understood that commentary, but then I was just having issues with those moments. And I think other than that, everything else I was perfectly fine with. And I think it's a film that is very important about the times we live. You know, films like Sinners, they touch on our history and just what's happening, whereas this one is a social commentary on what's happening in present day and how society is. Out of five, I'll give the film a four. I think it's entertaining. You know, one more thing I would add is this was the first time in a long time that I went to a theater and it was full. You know, the last time I was in the theater this full was when I watched Barbie last, was it in 2023? And that time it was because of kids. This time it was just full of adults, you know, and that was something that brought happiness to me because I think people should enjoy films in theaters, you know. Everything else is great. I highly recommend to watch it if you haven't. PTA is still a GOAT. Leo for me is one of the greatest actors ever.